Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of Cambro Conversations, the business and fitness podcast. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by longtime Instagram connection, Justin Wilkins. Justin is somebody that I've been connected with on Instagram for a number of years now. He works in the events industry, has a huge interest in property outside of that, but also fitness as well. So I was really keen to get Justin on today. Justin, if that intro doesn't do you justice, how about you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Appreciate you having me on, and it does my ego some justice. So I'm happy to come on and talk to everyone. Background on me, I guess if you was to go to my website, you'd probably see that, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a property expert, I'm a salesperson. But in short, I'm a salesperson for an events company, and I do property investing on the side. So whilst I'm not your typical Gary V definition of an entrepreneur, I think I've got entrepreneurial traits, and I enjoy it a lot as well, doing stuff on the side. So, if you look at, my background, when I was much younger, my grandfather was a huge part of my life, and he was a big influence on my life, along with my parents. But he was a property developer. So, and my parents helped him as well. But from a young age, it was instilled in me that working hard, whether that's in property or in any industry, working hard is where how to get you somewhere in life. And particularly for me, property is a sensible route for building wealth. I had the usual school upbringing, college. Didn't really see the benefits of education, or didn't put enough time in because it wasn't where my interests lie.
Yeah.
And because I had such a property upbringing, I left school and college and went straight into estate agency. So I did that for 7 years, and I really enjoyed it. And then, meeting people on a daily basis, working in property, that was such a huge part of my life and really shaped who I've been as well. But somewhere along the way, I sold a house to a gentleman. He said, "Look, have you looked at, selling events?" I said, "Absolutely no idea what you mean by that and what it is, but I'll, tell me about it." And, the hours were shorter, the money was better. And I personally thought, right, I can take my time away from spending so many hours in property and do something on the side whilst selling events. So took the jump, and I now work in the exhibition world, selling events in London from down here near Brighton. Somewhere along the way in all of that, I've also, launched and created a brand, Sure Fitness, which was all around my passion for fitness. And it was, a clothing brand, which I launched, created, built up, and then within recent years have sold. So did that along the way as well.
So much for us to unpick. And I think one of the reasons I was so keen to get you on is because you've got such a varied level of interest. You've got a career which you're passionate about and that ultimately pays the bills. You've got your interest in property, which is now a very much a financial one as well. And then alongside that, you and I were kind of introduced to each other through Shore Fitness as well, back in 2017. So it's there's a lot to cover, and I think there's a lot of valuable information that we'll probably unearth about how you're balancing all these things together alongside your interest in fitness, the role that it plays within that, but also just for people that are interested in financially freeing themselves in the next few years, things that they can do relating to property as well. I guess the kind of first area that we'll start with, because this is primarily a fitness podcast, was you founded Shore Fitness in 2017, is that right?
To end of 2016. Yeah, very right. Yeah.
So what led you to want to launch a fitness clothing brand? What was the passion behind it? What was the ideas behind it? And what were the early stages like?
Good question. I mean, essentially, I went to the gym myself. I got a real passion for fitness and to the gym, and it was building up. And, I was working hard. I was starting to spend my money on proper clothing. This was kind of when gym clothing was becoming a thing, and when it was it was Gymshark, Nike, or it was just some ropey t-shirt that you got from your local TK Maxx. And so I thought, right, there's a gap in the market here. Probably just the same as everyone was starting to think when they saw how much Gymshark was starting to build momentum. But it was back in their early days when they'd just started, obviously they were just building up. They'd done a few exhibitions and they were starting to really make a name for themselves. I was, of course, was inspired by them. But at the same time, wanted to completely take my brand away from the direction they were going. And I wanted to build some sort of, real life actual community, rather than obviously saying it was a community and using it as some marketing ploy. For me, I wanted to actually start down here in Brighton, build a brand, a solid brand, by doing local events, producing really good quality clothing, and then build it up from there, but build an actual kind of fitness community, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I remember that because I started my own fitness Instagram in early 2017. It would have been January, and Shore was one of the first independent brands that I saw that were posting clothing that I would actually wear. And that sounds really disrespectful to a lot of clothing brands that were coming out at the time, but some of the brands, they were just rip off Gymshark. They were like Gym Lion and stuff like that, just genuinely really unimaginative. They were taking the same looking t-shirts with a logo that was maybe not a shark but another animal, and you were just thinking, I mean, if it's between that and Gymshark, I'm probably going to buy the Gymshark t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a poor effort, that is, isn't it?
Exactly. So I remember being drawn to the Shore logo and the Shore kind of quality material and the quality of the clothing. And in a funny way, it was that influencer kind of dynamic that was growing at the time, where it was guys that I was following that were based down in Brighton, kind of in men's bodybuilding, men's fitness, that were wearing the stuff in Underground Gym, which is the kind of big bodybuilding gym down near you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember seeing that. I started following yourself and George as well. I remember AJ Morris maybe wore it briefly as well.
Right.
Naomi, who's down there too. And these were accounts that I followed. And when you see them wearing the clothing, you think, oh, that looks good. And the other thing that you've touched on is that building of a community locally. And that was something that really stood out, because I think it was it cystic fibrosis events that you were having, or?
That's right. Yeah, we did a mixture. We did, we were lucky there's a few sporting events down in Brighton, so we could get involved in them. But yeah, absolutely. We wanted to, because George, my business partner, who came on board shortly after I launched it, he started off as an influencer for it and then came on board, with the company. But he has cystic fibrosis. So to be able to then give back and do events and raise a bit of money for it and, get him speaking about it was a big part of it as well. So yeah, we're very lucky in that respect. And we built up, I remember thinking at the start of when I launched it, I thought, right, we haven't got much money in comparison to other brands. Yeah. So what can we do? We can just focus on our area. Around here, we can leaflet every business. I can leaflet every car around the gym when people are training. I can do every local event that only charges £200 for me to rock up with a gazebo. Yeah. Everything that was low budget, I thought, right, I'm going to do that, build this community up here. And then naturally, as people come on board, other people in the UK will see it. And really pleased, obviously, that you did and that Bryce did all the way up there in Glasgow. Yeah, that was funny, because I remember Bryce and I trained together for the first time around the time, and we both had the Shore t-shirts on, the Shore hoodies. I remember Bryce had made a video with another guy that was doing Fitness Instant at the time, Josh. That's it, Josh. Yeah. It's like in a gym down in York somewhere or something like that. They've met up and just gone and trained and got a video. And the at that point, it was just kind of so exciting and fresh. And like I say, that was the first brand that I started wearing on Instagram on my page, in terms of saying like, oh, this is a brand that I'm affiliated with, and was happy to promote it as well, which was great. And I think the positive thing was that the first
3 or 4 bits of kit from Shore that came out, the kind of burgundy t-shirt and the iconic t-shirt, I'd paid for them myself. So it meant I actually was happy to buy it. And it wasn't a case of have a t-shirt, mate, see it, like, which again is a good way to get yourself out there, but a bit more commitment from the kind of the Instagram fitness person that's posting your stuff. It's nice that they've actually invested beforehand.
And it's really nice that you did, because as a starting brand, you as an outsider, it's very difficult to appreciate to a brand just how much you mean, and they won't necessarily say it back to you. But if they're new, whether it's a friend, a family, or someone that isn't, every sale counts. And then, if you are a budding, someone that's wanting to become an influencer and you're building up your audience, it's also a great way. You buy a couple of bits of clothing each time you post, you're posting about yourself in it, and you're showing that you can add some value to that business. You're going to get noticed by them, so.
That was certainly the relationship, and that's how it went. In terms of startup costs, then what did it look like for a business like that? You obviously had some savings from working in property for 6-7 years. What kind of capital did you need to get started and produce your first items?
I think, we made a lot of mistakes in the 2 years that we ran the company. Okay. But I'm grateful I made those mistakes to then go on to the next bit. But when I started off, for me, it was all about obviously getting the quality right. I wanted to make sure the manufacturer was absolutely right, and because those first few pieces of clothing are what everyone's going to judge you on. And so I basically went to manufacturers in Turkey and Spain and Portugal, asked for samples, and with help was talking to them to make sure that we got the quality right, and they understood as well, because of course with language barriers, it makes it quite difficult. So what I was naive in doing is, when they came back to me initially and said, you can buy them, but for 500 units per piece of clothing, I negotiated with them a bit, but not enough. So essentially I bought 300 units of each item of clothing that we ordered. So the startup cost was looking at, it was just shy of probably about it's probably about £8,000-9,000. When you consider the amount we started, we bought the clothing with, and then we started pumping into Facebook advertising and events, straight away. We were, spending a reasonable amount to get started.
It was a big investment to get started. And I guess you probably got a lot of that traction early on locally in Brighton. You started to get some traction on Instagram with quite genuine fans of the business. As things progressed, I know we've spoken about this offline with one of our kind of more business-minded chats, which is good. How did things progress from there, and what led to you pivoting and moving your interest more towards property in terms of that focus for you as a side hustle outside of work?
So I ran that business for 2 years. I loved it. There's some things that come with running a business that aren't always clear. When you're on Instagram, you're trawling through and you're seeing these new businesses. And that is that, especially a business like Shore Fitness was, it's, clothing that are direct to consumer. That business is 24/7. And I'm not afraid of hard work. As I said, I like to get stuck in. I like, in a way, depending on a business that needs me to be there, because I enjoy, grafting and doing that side of it. But it is relentless, and it takes up every bit of free space in your brain is thinking about that business, what you can do, the finances, and for me, I just couldn't take my eye off the ball for that whole 2 years. I was constantly thinking about it, every bit of free space in my head. So what led for me to then go, right, I need to go, I'm thinking of pivoting and changing it, is we'd got to a point where, what isn't clear from someone outside is that you can be making a lot of sales and selling a lot of product, but unless you're making a huge margin of profit, to be able to go and do the next launch of clothing is really difficult. So, again, it always comes down to, with any business, it's cash flow. It's making sure you have enough money to do that next launch, and do what you can with the little money that you have. So if you order and launch a line of new clothing, for example, it costs you £3,000 to order that line of new clothing you're about to launch. And over the next 3 to 6 months, you will sell that clothing, hopefully, and you'll recoup £7,000. So you think, great, I spent 3,000, I got to 7,000, that's 4,000 profit, right? However, you've probably along the way spent, £1,000 on advertising, you spent £2,000 on events, and maybe working with influencers and all the different expenses that come with running a business. So whilst you are building up this audience each time, you now maybe only have £500 or £1,000 remaining from all that clothing you've sold. So we got to a point where we reached a place where we might need 40 or 50,000 pounds of investment to really make this a viable business, and to be able to quit our day job and pull in enough sales to do that. So at that point, we really reflected it, taking on that amount of debt or that amount of investment, depending how you look at it, is quite a big risk. And in what was quite a saturated market, as much as I loved it, we had to sit back, review the finances and see what, where to go from there. And just as a side note that people that don't often know is that I wanted to create a really good brand and some really quality clothing, but a personal goal of mine was to take the profits of that business and invest them in property.
Yeah.
So when I took a step back, it was, maybe I should just cut the middleman. And, so I sold the business and then looked towards property, which is what I do now.
I think that's a really interesting case study for people that perhaps think, I'm going to start selling gym kit and I'm going to be the next Gymshark. And
100%.
So much more to it. And the relative success that Shore had in its first 2 years still meant that you needed to invest a lot more money to take it to the next stage, to make it actually viable. Because during all this time, you were still working 5 or 6 days a week in your career, paying bills, probably making like whatever it was you were making in your normal role, and every kind of spare bit of saving was going into the business to try and drive it on to the next step. And that's a really, really interesting one. And one of the things you spoke about, where you perhaps sold the new launch of clothing that you'd invested £3,000 in for 7,000, you count all the overheads. The other variable that we sometimes forget with these things is actually time.
Yeah.
So the amount of time that you would have spent outside of your 9 to 5 in this business, and maybe £500 was the outcome of that period of time. It's very hard to to continue to do that without really either what would be called the shit or bust moment, either shit or get off the pot. And I think when we've spoken about it previously, that passion you had for property, and ultimately the aim of Shore was to build a great brand, but to help you finance the ability to then build that property empire of yours. It makes total business sense to cut the middleman, as you said. But I think the big thing is those lessons you learned during that period seem so valuable now.
100%. It was worth, even though I managed to get money back from selling the business, it was worth even if I hadn't, it would be worth the 10,000 investment. What's key is that as part of the journey, I learned so many lessons in running that fitness, clothing brand, and that, yes, they're not completely transferable over to when you're talking about investing in property, but knowing yourself, self-development. When I sold that business, I then went from working all the time to just working my 9 till 5, and then had all this free time. And I decided at the time I was going to wait at least a year, and where I could spend saving some more money, but also learning. So I literally spent all that extra time and making sure that when I went into property, that obviously there's going to be mistakes along the way, but that I could minimize those mistakes from the lessons I'd learned in running a business previously. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's really powerful. If you were to share with the listeners one big lesson that you learned from your time with Shore that you're trying to take into your property career, what would you say that is?
consistency.
Okay.
Just, you know, not making sure everything's perfect. Obviously, you know, you want your brand to stand out and look really high quality, but if you just apply consistency to anything, just show up time after time or post after post, or, you know, whatever it is, day after day in your job, consistency is such a huge part that people forget. I read a book once called The Slight Edge, and it's very much a self-development book. And that book just goes, it's all about building up daily habits that every day you repeat. And at first, you know, if you took a graph, at first you're you know, it's only increasing at a small rate and at a small step. But, you know, after months, years of implementing these daily steps, you will then see a spike. You will see the momentum build. It's a very good book, actually.
Brilliant. I think that's one of the reasons you and I get on so well, because I love that message.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's relevant in all areas of life, but certainly in business and in your career, where turning up daily and doing the absolute level best that you can to move the needle in the right direction, the dial in the right direction towards where you want to go is so valuable, particularly in the days where it doesn't seem like you're making huge strides, but the days that you turn up when it doesn't seem like you're making progress, those add up over time, as you said.
Yeah, definitely. They really do.
With your move into property then, what does that look like in terms of a time spend versus running a fitness business outside your 9-5? So your 9-5 is quite demanding. It's sales, it's business development. All those skills probably are relevant to property and development, but what does the time spend look like in terms of you looking to build up a portfolio of houses, flats, apartments?
Yeah, so it's very different, because when you're running, say when I was running Shore Fitness, if you took all of that time that I spent outside of work, it's always taking action or implementing something, whether it's social media, doing orders, you know, fulfilling orders, doing the finances, all of that sort of things. You know, they take up so much time, each and every bit. Whereas in property, you're either taking action or you're kind of sitting back and then planning for your next move. So, you know, after selling the business, I then took a year out. I planned, I read loads, I completely immersed myself. I went to networking events, you know, this completely immerse yourself in whatever industry it is, whether you are selling, whether it's in fitness, whether it's in property, whatever it is.
Yep.
You can't go wrong by meeting people and talking to people, learn from their mistakes. But what I try to get at is that I essentially took all of that time so that when I had the money ready and was ready to take action, I could. But with property, you're not always taking action, because right now, for example, where I have recently bought a buy to let, that's now rented out. I went through an incredibly stressful period where of buying it, going through the conveyancing, then we completed on it in December. Then we had to go up there and do the works to it. And then before you knew it, it was Christmas, and I was trying to put it on the rental market. And there was there was 3 weeks over Christmas, it was empty. And, you know, there's stress then, and then it's rented out. And then all of a sudden that stress is kind of lifted somewhat. And you're kind of, again, you take a step back and you go, okay, right now I need to do research. You know, your time is spent so much differently. So now then I'm researching deals, I'm researching strategies. I'm trying to see how I can get hold of money quicker, to then invest in more. But so I still spend a lot of time in property, but a lot less time actually taking action or implementing something.
Yeah, again, for me, so much to take from that comment. And well, I'm laughing there when you're saying taking action, because I put that at the end of absolutely every Instagram post, because I think so many people so many people wait for the perfect system, the perfect routine, the perfect diet, the perfect whatever before taking action, and they don't do it. But at the same time, it's so important to have the right approach, or the steps to take the right approach. And that's clear that you did that throughout the time between moving on and pivoting and selling Shore to actually purchasing the first buy to let property as part of your portfolio.
Yeah.
And all that research, in many ways, it was taking action to build the base, but it wasn't taking action in terms of an actual financial investment or well, there was probably some financial investment in the networking events, but there wasn't that kind of all action firefighting, all hands to the pump action that you take when you're running a business. But there
exactly.
was considered action behind the scenes before you publicly made your move. And I think that's a really good lesson for us all as well, because what you did behind the scenes ultimately led to the first successful buy to let. And that's a testament to the hard graft that people don't see behind the scenes ultimately.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, I completely agree with that. And it comes down to, the other thing that I've been able to focus on by having more time essentially, and not having as much time taking action in property, is the fitness side of things. When I ran a business, it's funny, you start a business because you love fitness, because you want to create better products for people on the market, and then you get so wrapped up in your fitness business that you then start losing time to actually do fitness itself, actually take action and do the workouts itself. So then all of a sudden your head is so wrapped up in this business and the finances that you then also struggle to take your head out of that. So you'll go to the gym and your mind is completely in the wrong place. So again, I've really appreciated taking a step back. I've put all the time into myself, whether that's self-development for my next steps or whether that's fitness, and, really built that relationship up with, when I think that I've probably gone to the gym for 11 years, but then I've reconnected with it over the last 2 years a lot. So
yeah, I think anyone that follows you on Instagram, and of course we'll be plugging your handle in the show notes, will know that you're a huge advocate of that early morning training and getting your workout in to start your day and getting those endorphins pumping and setting you up for your working day. Now, all this research and now management and investment you've got in a property and looking at your next move as well, that will be time consuming for you. And I know it's not as time consuming as when you ran the business, but what does a day look like in order for you to be really productive and happy that you've worked towards your goals? I know that morning training session is a big part of that, but maybe take the guys that are listening through what that looks like and maybe why some of the stuff is included in there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a huge believer that you've got to train at a time that suits you. So for me, it's 100% the morning. I've probably done it for 5 years now. And it started again because of having a busy lifestyle, running a business, as well as working. I thought the best way for me to get my head engaged and make sure I do this every day is by starting in the morning. And then from there, I've just learned to absolutely love morning training. So a standard day for me will be get up at 5:30, and then I'll head to the gym, hope to get there for 6:30, 6:45. By the time I've got myself ready and traveled there, I like to put in at least, good hours effort, and it will be a mixture of weights and cardio because, listen, when I started the gym when I, probably about 11, 12 years ago, I was probably like a lot of people. I was, stocky, definitely a little bit on the fat side. I'd come out of school. I'd gone to a lad's holiday in Faliraki, and big up Faliraki. So that was when I was about 16, and I'd realised then, after a week of trying and failing a lot, that to get girls, you probably need to have a good body And so that completely ignited my my passion for the gym. Or essentially, I got home, I decided, right, I'm going to lose weight. I then, of course, lost too much weight, and then decided I was too skinny. So then I joined the gym, and then it's sort of worked up from there. But for me, it was quite clear 2 or 3 years into lifting that I wasn't going to get huge. I'd love to, and but it's perhaps not the route or path I was going to take. So I've kind of since then transitioned to, I love lifting weights and I still lift weights, but I'll also want cardio because I want to be healthy. I want to eat healthy. I want to increase my life and longevity. So yeah, going back to my workouts, they tend to be a mixture of weights and cardio in the same session, or I'll go in and I'll do, a full cardio session. I also play a bit of ice and roller hockey on the side. So I tailor some of my leg and cardio training, my leg sessions, to fit the fact that I play quite an explosive sport, and try and improve my cardio side of things because that's a very demanding sport.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think that's important as well to have that outlet as well. Now, for me, my main outlet is purely related to the gym, but I know from when I was younger and rugby was my main kind of competitive sport, that's a great outlet as well, outside of the stresses of studying or working, whatever it is you're up to. And that's interesting as well. And ultimately, your training style, it doesn't have to be the same as everyone else. Like, I think when we start training and we end up getting a bit of knowledge about how to bulk up, we get really attached to that kind of classic push-pull legs split, and we need to be doing it 6 days a week, and that's how you get massive and get birds. But ultimately, sometimes the goals shift in terms of maybe it's not just all about pure size and aesthetics. It's about being able to move well for your sport, being healthy, like you say. And I know from this recent kind of COVID-19 period that kind of that aerobic exercise and cardio exercise can feel really rewarding as well. And the endorphins you get from that are every bit as good, and sometimes better if you've not had it for a while, than just lifting weights as well. So I certainly respect the decision to have a training style that's based around lifestyle and how you feel as well, and not just in terms of, can I gain an extra kilo of muscle this year? Which is what we can sometimes get stuck in when we're very much bodybuilding focused.
Yeah, still important. But,
no, that's huge. And once you've had your workout, you're feeling good, you're feeling great. Maybe just before 8 o'clock in the morning, quarter to 8.
Around then, yeah.
What's next in the agenda?
I'll then head into work because my gym's basically on the way into work. I'll then continue the journey head into work, and again, just like to arrive, if I can, at work at least 15 or 20 minutes early, so I can, by then it'll have been, at least half an hour will have passed, and I can have a good breakfast, put the calories to use, and just get my mind right, really. So that's the other thing for me. Training in the morning is massively beneficial on my mindset. And it's not to say that people in the evening don't get this, but for me, if I've trained in the morning, I know that I'm ready for the day. I've set myself up. I've put my head in the right gear. I've already completed something. I've already had a win, as some might say, for me.
Yeah.
And for then I can put my mind into my work because I know I've got that part of my day out of the way. So
that's really big, and I guess one of the benefits to that, particularly when you were, and even now, maybe if you're getting emails from tenants, but back in the shore days when you were getting emails maybe about orders and whatnot, if that was coming through throughout the day, that might jeopardize your evening training session. So to get that done in the morning, like you say, that's one very big important box ticked, and then it's time for work and to focus on what at the moment pays the bills mostly.
yeah, exactly.
And for the listeners, I know we've spoken about this offline in terms of what your role is like in the events industry. What does a day look like? What does a successful day look like for Justin Wilkins?
It varies. our office is in Brighton. We go through stages. We have show cycles, so a show is predominantly most shows are once a year. They're big, high revenue shows within certain industries. So yes, we're in the trade show industry, but we run events for people in different industries. For example, there's the equivalent of me. Obviously, I don't work on a fitness show, unfortunately, but there's the equivalent of me that runs Body Power, for example.
Yeah.
And that for them is an all year job for those 3 or 4 days of the year that they put it on. So yeah, for an everyday, we have show cycles, but for any part of the year, when the show's on, obviously that's a critical time. We're up in London, we're staying in hotels, we're putting the show on, meeting the clients, making sure it goes smoothly. And then we have a period after that where it perhaps goes a little bit quieter, where we can really get a few of the projects done ahead of next year's show. And then it will be anything from cold calling to warm leads, trying to convert them, going out on meetings, meeting people face to face in Brighton or London, and going to other events, competitor events, where we can meet new clients. Again, cold business, but we might meet them for the first time and try and poach them from other shows, and so on. So it varies a lot in that respect, but a general day-to-day is in the office, and it will be calling, it will be working with current clients, new clients, and it's very much, we're quite lucky because we work in the office, our hours are flexible. So a lot of the time now I'll do 8:30 till 4:30 or 9 till 5, depending on how well the trip in has gone in terms of traffic and everything. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And the time outside of that, when you're getting back to home in Brighton, that's now being invested towards property. Obviously, social life as well, and seeing your partner. But what kind of time investment are you making in developing yourself? I know you've spoken a lot about that, but what does that look like at the moment, and what resources are you using?
I'm a big advocate of reading. I know there's audio books, but I don't really connect with them a lot. So for me, I like to read. That's normally something I would, if I get time, I'll do before bed or at the weekends. But on the actual way home from work, I actually really enjoy that. And currently with COVID going on, I'm missing that because you're working from home. There's no transition between finish and being home. Whereas in my usual day to day, really love the fact that, it's going to take me 40 minutes at least to get home, so I can get stuck into a nice podcast and not think of anything, just apart from listening to that, just sit there, not think of anything, listen, absorb. It comes down to the self-development again, but that'll be on property or sales, and depending what mood I'm in. Sometimes fitness as well, of course. There's a few podcasts out there I listen to fitness wise, and it's normally not necessarily how to train or what to train. It might just be about the bodybuilding world. Whilst I am in absolutely no means anywhere near a bodybuilding physique, I love to watch and listen and learn about the top pros in the world. And there's some good podcasts out there for that as well that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a mixture of podcasts. I certainly listen to a wide variety, and I agree. Sometimes I'll listen to one on sales because that's what will maybe improve me in work. But other times I'll listen to one about my football team, or I will listen to ones about fitness as well, like, because it's such a huge part of my life. But like you say, sometimes it's not about just what muscle group to train and stuff like that. It's more about, like, how do these guys live? Like, what are their habits and routines like? What can I take from that? What achievements have they had that can maybe motivate me? Because I don't know about you, but like, you're probably similar to myself when you have conversations with Bryce. It fires you up, our kind of mutual friend Bryce Bell, because he's a really motivational character. So listening to podcasts that are similar to that with successful people can be a big benefit as well.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, I take so much from podcasts, and I think there's always room for more podcasts. There's never not. And there's new and creative ways that you can come into the space, like you are combining interests. It doesn't just have to be fitness, and it doesn't just have to be a repeat of what the next person does. It could be exactly what you're doing, and that is taking fitness and how everyday people implement that to become better at sales or become better at business or so on. So
Yeah.
there's definitely space for some real, more podcasts, because people are always listening and learning now.
Yeah, it's certainly my favorite platform to consume. I used to watch a lot of YouTube when I was at university, but I think I probably maybe watch 2 or 3 videos a week, and it tends to be, if somebody like yourself posts one about a topic I'm interested in, then I will log on to YouTube to watch that.
Yeah.
Whereas podcasts are coming straight into my phone on a daily basis, and I'm listening to 2 or 3 a day around in my commute, my steps, my lunch break, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things you touched on, and the big aim of this podcast, and the reason that I've kind of launched it, is around the influence that fitness has. And you've spoken about it setting you up for your day. You mentioned it make you better at sales, make you better at business development. What would you say some of the transferable things are over from that kind of discipline that you've got around an early morning fitness routine into your career and events?
So it's about setting up a routine. Again, it comes down to what you're used to and what you like. But if you can set a routine, like for me, the gym is such a big part of the mindset as much as it is fitness and being healthy. One of the sayings I go by, or I say I created it, but I definitely didn't create it. But it's happy, healthy, wealthy, because happiness is key, and that's got to come first. But second to that is healthy, being healthy and increasing the longevity of my life. And then thirdly, wealth, and being a wealthy person and doing it again at a sensible rate, in which we can build up a good amount of money, hopefully retire early. So those 3 things I take, and I guess I've crafted them around being a business owner, being a salesperson, enjoying the gym, and I just implement them in everyday life. And I think that if someone feels good, they've gone to the gym, they've worked out hard, and you feel really good, and if you're eating well, and you've then immediately put yourself 2 steps ahead of someone else who's being lethargic, not going to the gym, not holding themselves accountable, and they're perhaps a bit sloppy and overweight. And as horrible as that is, but you're at an advantage over them. So I like that, and I like thinking that inside, that yes, I treat everyone as an equal at my work, but I'm probably a few steps ahead of everyone in that office.
You set yourself up to win. You set yourself up to win and be the best version of you. And that, for me, is a huge part of business development and sales, because it's a tough job. There's a lot of rejection, but ultimately you need to have that reassurance in yourself that you've done the right things to be a success. And part of that is fueling yourself appropriately, like you've said, with healthy food, training hard, and having those endorphins and that feeling of accomplishment, and looking well and healthy, and feeling presentable when you go out and see somebody in your suit, I think is a huge thing for your confidence. And ultimately, confidence is big in the business development game, isn't it? And I think I couldn't agree more on what fitness does. And I think that's a big note for anyone listening about why, in a career where ultimately it's all about financials and sales and the outcome, that extra bit of the equation where you're adding fitness in there is a benefit, and it's not actually taken away from it. The fact that you get up a wee bit earlier to go and train probably makes you a better employee.
Yeah, I hope so. When I started, when I started off in life going for jobs, and not necessarily, because obviously at the time I wasn't training before work, but I'd mentioned, this was obviously, 2009, 2010, 2011. I'd mentioned, I go to the gym 5 times a week. They'd think I'm nuts, but but now there's completely different thought about it. The fitness industry has boomed since then, and people realize the benefits it adds to to people's mindset, and a lot of employers now know that. So when I came into this job, and I said, yeah, I get up, I go to the gym before work, I do it 4 to 5 times a week, and I won't stop doing that. They actually quite liked it, and they were completely on board with it, and they could see I was motivated enough to get up at 5:30 every morning. I'm probably going to be motivated enough to pick up the phone and start making calls.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's transferable as well. That kind of discipline to do the stuff that's maybe not that glamorous and that attractive transfers over into cold calling, cold approaches, and being quite a resilient person. No, brilliant. That's one of the messages that I just think is so important to try and get out there to guys, because so many people that I know say like, "Oh, the gym's too time consuming," or "It's not a priority for me right now," and other areas of their life suffer. And if anything, you're demonstrating that commitment to getting up that little bit earlier is paying dividends across the rest of your life as well. One of the main things that I wanted to get out of this podcast, apart from that last area that we've really spoken about, is what are your long-term goals, Justin? I know that a lot of those will probably sit within property, but I would just love to hear what those are, and like what are the plans to achieve those that you can
Yeah.
tell us publicly.
No, I can definitely, yeah. And the beauty about what I do now in sales and in property is that both of those, usually, particularly in property, it's quite a sharing environment. By telling someone you want to go out and buy a 4-bedroom house and then split it up into a HMO and rent it out to students, you're
Yeah,
not in competition with most people because you work in different areas. So the nice thing about the property is it is actually a community, and you can share that. Whereas if you're a business owner and you're about to launch a new product, or you're about to go into a different sector, you can't really tell other people because you're continuously in competition. But yeah, for me, progressing, or my next progressions, aside from my personal life, and obviously progressing my family, and my girlfriend, and relationships and holidays, and the usual things, I really want to progress my career, continue making sure that I exceed in every way possible. I'm slightly different from the usual person in the sense that I'm not too worried about the job title side of things. I'd rather know my position, know what kind of client I'm going after, make money in commission, and then focus that into my side hustles, essentially, or
yeah,
into property. I don't need to work my way up the ladder to do that. I just want to be able to be put in the actual opportunity to earn well. So I'm fortunate enough to have that, and work for a good company. So I want to progress that, and continue to earning more money as well. And then going on from there, for me, obviously I have 2 properties now. The big goal, particularly if I could do this by the time I'm 35, would be to, it doesn't matter how many properties it is, really. I'm not one for counting how many houses or properties I own,
okay,
but the big goal would be to maybe get between 7 and 10 properties,
yep,
or the equivalent to, say, a passive income, or as passive as it can be, passive income of, say, about £5,000. So then that would, replace my income and a little bit, and then, means I can really then do this full time, which is my passion. Obviously, I love sales, but if I could work in property full time, there's elements in which I can meet people and do selling in that environment as well. So,
absolutely.
um, and obviously the ultimate goal is to still be going to the gym at 80 years old. So
Yeah, exactly. So regardless of where you go with your career, the gym will probably still play a big role in that, which is great.
100%.
And
Yeah.
that's a big lofty goal that you've got, and one that it's clear that you're doing everything you can to put the foundations in place to reach that. And that's something that a lot of people won't see, because maybe they see you at 35 and you've got 10 properties, you've got a return of £5,000 profit per month on top of, like, outside your mortgages and stuff like that. And people just assume that maybe that fell into place for you. Maybe mum and dad gave you a bit of money to do it, that kind of thing, because you're still quite young at 35. I know that sounds crazy, but increasingly I think 35 isn't that old in
Yeah.
real
I mean, for
terms.
me, that's 7 years away. So that gives you 7 years to build up what I need. And yeah, it still would be young. to do that by.
Exactly that. But it's so far from an overnight success because of the journey you're going on to get there at the moment. And that's all related to that consistency lesson that you learned from Shore, that you're kind of rinsing and repeating the actions you need to take to get you there. And I think that's a fantastic message for everyone listening that's made it this far with you and I having a chat.
I can add one last goal to that as well, actually, if that's all right.
Okay.
Now that we've gone through this situation, I need a home gym.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what's going on in the world, you're absolutely right. That contingency to have a nice kitted out home gym would be a luxury. So your third property after these two can have that potentially.
Yeah, convert a garage into a nice working gym space with some good kit. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, that's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today, Justin, and hopefully the listeners take a lot from that. I'll include the links to your Instagram and your YouTube and your website below. But for those that won't click into the show notes, where should they go?
Yeah, main place to find me is Instagram. I know that most people place themselves across a few platforms, but really I'm just Instagram and YouTube focused. So, they can obviously find my tag and find me on Instagram, give me a follow. And then on YouTube, you can just put in Justin Wilkins Property. And essentially, you'll see a bit of fitness on there, maybe not enough. I would like to do a bit more, but a lot of what I do is property. So, and I'm not monetizing what I do. I'm still obviously building up my following, but I'm purely there because I want, when any of your listeners here think about buying their first home, or think about, they've got a good career, they've got their first property, and then they want to invest in another property on the side. Yeah. I want them to think of me and think, I need some advice. I'll go to Justin. I want people to come to me, ask for advice. I've got a lot of property expertise over the years that I've built up, and that's what I want to be known for. And I want to help people out as much as I can. So,
yeah, absolutely. And that's a conversation that you and I have had and will continue to have, because like you say, you're mentioning that second bracket where I'm lucky enough to have my first property, and I'm now in a position where I'm financially stable again after deposit and stuff like that, where I'm looking at how do I start to make my money work harder for me, because if it sits in an ISA, we're not making anything from it. And if I do buy stocks and shares and whatnot, but ultimately I know that property is a cold hard asset, and it tends to pay over time, doesn't it? So we can certainly have that conversation offline as well. But yeah, fantastic. Thanks again for your time, Justin. And
it's okay. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For everyone listening, please like the podcast, drop it a 5-star rating, share it with a friend, pop it in your Instagram story, drop us any feedback, and we will keep the episodes coming. Thanks again.
Cheers, Carl.